Been a wild couple weeks here, and we saw that Supercell had invited me back into the creator program, but I'm not really sure exactly what they meant by that because they gave me access to my dashboard, but they have still locked every feature. So I don't have a creator code, and effectively I have access to the dashboard and I can do nothing with it. So maybe their peace offering meant nothing. Maybe I need to just wait a little bit longer to see what they do. So we'll be keeping an eye on that over the next couple days here. But we do have a war on our hands today. It is the French Clash Cup. We're diving into Synchronic taking on VN Esporting. They are going to be played on normal mode today. And as we play through, they will have a Root Rider ban in place. And I do want to talk about a couple things here about the state of the game while we talk about this war going on and see what ultimately happens. Right now, Gorka Rocks is one of the other semifinals, waiting in the grand finals to see which of these two teams ends up facing off with them. But I also want to point out that we still haven't had a reinstatement of Erica into the creator program, even though that doesn't really seem to mean anything right now because it doesn't really seem to do anything to be in the creator program at the moment. They gave me access to a fan kit that is freely available for the entire internet anyway, so I'm not really sure what that means right now, but I just wanted to let everybody know that this is not over. This drama is still continuing, and this fight is not done. So until Supercell restores things completely, then we're not out of this yet, and there's still a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of problems with the game right now as well. One of the big problems right now is in esports. As you have probably seen, we see a lot of the wars actually end up being a time battle. And I don't know if this one will be a time battle. I guess we'll find out here shortly because they do have a Root Rider ban. But a lot of the big tournaments, like in the World Championship, for example, in the World Championship and all of the tournaments run by ESL, basically everything that beats the World Championship, Supercell is running on normal mode instead of hard mode. And Root Riders are allowed, so they end up being a complete spam fest of Root Riders, and it ends up being, honestly, a little bit boring. So I guess this one is still pushing it with the World Champion across the top of the base. They're going to get that multi-inferno down, make his way across into the last couple defenses. Warden gets hit by Black Air Bomb. Just kidding. That was the Electric Owl that got hit by that. But the defenses are down, and he'll go right into cleanup. Does he get this one done under a minute and a half? It's going to be close, right in that ballpark. I think it'll go just over it. And this is a golden ticket team to the World Championship. And being able to play without the Root Riders is going to be a little bit more challenging, but these teams handle it. And ultimately, a lot of these wars turn into a time battle in the end. I'm not sure why they are continuing to not use hard mode across the biggest tournaments in Clash of Clans esports, because right now the game has become very, very stale in that everything ends up being a time battle. And honestly, it's kind of hurting Clash of Clans esports as a whole. So this one is going to be some dragon spam, which is, I mean, you're seeing a lot of Root Rider spam, you're seeing the dragon spam, and then you're seeing the occasional Lalo. That Lalo was very nice, I have to admit. It was very, very nice here, but these dragon attacks are very, very simple. E-drag attacks are very, very simple. Root Rider attacks are very, very simple. And I think that's kind of also due to a bigger underlying problem in Clash of Clans as a whole, where if you were an average player looking at these bases, and you weren't doing it like every single day like most of the people that were probably watching this video do, then you probably have no idea what is going on with the majority of everything, because the bases have become so massive, the game has become so bloated. I think that most people look at the bases, look at the game, and it's really difficult for them to really even understand what the heck is happening 90% of the time. Normal wars are boring? Yeah, they're gonna be time battles, right? Yeah, there we go. Demo gets it done. It looks like that was a 58-second attack. Okay, that was very, very fast there for demos. Returning fire over to Synchronic will be an Electro Dragon attack. And I do think that the simpler attacks there become such a big part of the meta, are a thing that is able to help combat against the bases just becoming such monstrosities. Like, most people that would play this game would not be able to look at these massive bases and break them down. Now, if you're dealing with the pro players, they play the game every day, and so they're able to find different ways to break them down. But even a lot of pro players would struggle against a lot of these bases if the game was a little bit more difficult and the spam meta wasn't so egregious. Because right now, the spam meta runs the entire game unless we switch over to hard mode and force people to play something a little bit different. And I think that that is kind of the intention of what Supercell is doing. Like, they're trying to make the game a little bit easier for the casual players, because I think they recognize that the game has become so bloated that it's hard for anybody to really understand, like I said, 90% of what's going on in any given fight there. And they can understand just putting a wall of dragons or E-Drags or Rubiters into a base and letting it move across there. But the more complex attacks, the ones that have to have a further breakdown, that's where people would start to fall off there. And obviously at the esports level, that's where we want them to be able to take these spaces and still find a way to take them down, even if the normal players couldn't. But right now, everybody can take the bases down. The pro players can just do it slightly faster, as we saw in the last attack. It was a 58-second attack there from Demo, but this one is going to lock in a little bit slower than that. Another one will climb up around the minute-and-a-half mark, but still at a competitive level here for Synchronic. And ultimately, the bases don't really stand much of a chance here. It is just spam a wall of E-Drags. If you get your spells in the right spot, which these guys are good at, then you're gonna get the triples, and it just comes down to who does it faster at this point. So now as we pass it back over to Viet Esporting, they're gonna need a pretty fast attack here to be able to stay pace. No, wait, I just said they had the time lead. I'm backwards. Viet Esporting is gonna have to go really slow to have this war shift into Synchronic favor, but a giant arrow shoots across the base there. And so with those points in mind that I just talked about, I do want to talk about how it is becoming more and more difficult for new players to enter into Clash of Clans esports. At the moment, it's very difficult for anybody to get involved because you need to be at the max level of the game, and with the game being obviously so expensive to be able to actually catch up if you are a new player, that means the only people that would ever really be eligible to be able to get involved in Clash of Clans esports and to start to test their mettle into these big tournaments would be people that have already been playing for a very, very, very long time. And that is making so that the game is very, very restrictive. And this has been a long time problem with the game here. This is nothing new, but it is just continuing to become bigger and bigger problem as the game gets bigger and bigger, and the time to progress all the way to max becomes longer and longer. So it ultimately makes so that there's very, very little, if any, new talent ever entering into the scene. Looks like I'm a little bit late to jump into this one here. Looks like some more dragons, though, and Synchronic has a lot of time to make up for. But on the topic of where teams are struggling to find new talent because it's so difficult, because the barrier to entry into esports is so high, it makes so that when you lose really good players to bans, which are either competitive bans, but even when people have like dirty accounts that are not able to compete, and then they also have some very, very clean accounts there that were the original accounts, what happens is lately Supercell has set a new precedent where they are banning the clean accounts there when there's a problem with the non-clean account. And then they put the 1-year competitive ban. The first indication of that was what we saw on 2P Castro. We saw it with Jesus. We saw it with Peivu, where they didn't just go after their smaller accounts there that had the issues. They actually banned their main accounts. And so now we just got a report that I haven't confirmed this 100% yet. So this may just be a rumor, but it's sounding like Navi's new player, Yada, just had 2 of his accounts there banned from some of his low-level accounts. Achilles, who was the newest recruit into HTM, sounds like he just had 2 of his accounts banned. And I also heard a rumor that Timper had one of his accounts banned as well. This is going to have a chain reaction throughout all of Clash of Clans esports, where if they start banning people's main accounts there for infractions on their lower accounts, where they could just issue the player a competitive like 1-year ban to make sure they are punished in a way, but then doesn't make so that they can never effectively return to Clash of Clans esports in general, because if you lose your main account, then how do you ever get back into the game? Like, because somebody just saying in the Twitch chat here that they have been playing for 5 years and they're at Town Hall 13. And so that's the pace that you have to play through to have a chance to push towards max. And so people who have to start over will never catch up again. They just won't. It's basically impossible. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's just kind of like they set a precedent here, and they kind of shot themselves in the foot here with this. I feel like they ultimately set a precedent where they wanted to ban people for their lower accounts having a problem and take their higher level accounts out of commission and ban them as well. But as a result of that, it's going to make so that every single pro player, which obviously there are a lot of them that have lower accounts there that were not their own original accounts. And if that's the case, then it seems like we're going to lose a lot of players before the dust settles and this is all over. And at the end, who will be standing. Because if you wipe out the majority of the talent of the game, then you're basically wiping out the entire pro scene. Because a lot of these pro players, like they also understand that it takes a really, really, really long time to be able to get a new account up, and so maybe at some point they were tempted to buy another account, and if they did it once, then they put their entire, they put all their accounts at risk, and that might have been something that happened years ago, but ultimately, it is what it is. However, it looks like we got a defense on the board here as VN Esporting ends up with a miss on this one, and I guess that time advantage that they've been carrying is now out the window. It is going to end. It looks like, I guess the king will get a little bit further here, but not much further. It'll end into the 90s, high 90s, but it is going to be setting the bar now for Synchronic as we go to the second half of the war. They put themselves into a lose-lose situation, because either they hold the standard evenly across all players and they wipe out the entire esports scene, or they find a different way that is a little bit more forgiving. He almost got through on this one, though. 97%. Phoenix carried a little bit further. It will be a miss, though. Look what we started. We didn't start this, Peivu. We didn't start this. This is a natural repercussion of their own actions. If they want to go too crazy on some players, like if they want to go extra strict on some players, then they need to be that same strict on everybody. But when you're that same strict on everybody, then you end up just wiping through massive swaths of esports teams. And the problem with that is when we are taking down a player, you're taking down the whole team with them and knocking them out of tournaments, like we've seen multiple times. And so that becomes another problem where at the end of the day, once the dust settles from this, are we going to have half of our teams disqualified from the World Championship? Is that the end game here? Is that the end play? I mean, I guess we're going to find out, because it's kind of crazy with all this going on, because this makes it demoralizes the whole team to get knocked out of the entire competition from one of their players, and like nobody knows what their teammates are doing. So is it fair to punt the whole team if one player has an issue that maybe they even hid from their team? Like, you don't really know that. So disqualifying entire teams feels like another big step there that they also set a precedent for. And as soon as they did that, Navi, as soon as they took a one-year competitive ban onto Picastro, and then also disqualified Navi, they set a new precedent. So now either they continue to enforce that precedent and wipe out more teams, or the alternative is that they go against and put an unfair distribution of enforcement of rules. And so that's how, like, that's basically equally as bad. You know, I didn't really word that very well, but you get my point. If you enforce the rules evenly, then you're in trouble. If you don't enforce the rules evenly, you're also in trouble. So the problem is that they set the precedent in the first place. And I think at the end of the day, they're just trying to protect their monetization for the greater grand scheme of the game outside of esports, and in turn, it is hurting esports. So it looks like Synchronic is to get another triple here. It looks like Dragon's able to pull through. Nice little spiky ball at the beginning of the attack there with the giant arrow to set up. But ultimately, normal mode is just run by Dragons, and it ends up being time battle after time battle. Obviously, this war is not going to a time battle, but it has actually ended up pretty close there. So I'm mildly entertained by this match here. They're playing well today, and it looks like we got a pretty close match as we begin the final three attacks. Peivu from the Twitch chat brings up a very, very good point. In the past, they used to only make so that infractions for like a TOS violation affected only the account that the violation happened on. And so now they've started to expand that out there. And that's like, I think that was the biggest problem and why there's so many issues just recently. And then an unfair enforcement of those new precedents that they set has also caused a lot of the problems that we're having now. Because how do you even explain this? If they kept the previous precedent, then we probably wouldn't be sitting in the situation where before, if you had an account get banned, then it didn't affect your main account there. And I think that in an attempt to preserve their monetization, Supercell has basically sacrificed the esports scene, which it seems like the way they're going. And with the way the game has been so excessively monetized recently, it just seems like it's not that surprising when you see things like the Apprentice Builder, when you see things like the hero equipment being so ridiculously pay to win. And then even the skins, like anybody else look at all the skins that we get recently, and it just feels like none of them are special anymore because we're getting so many of them. Like, none of the skins feel special at all. It is another triple here for V8 Sporting. Looks like we got a 12 to 11 war. We'll begin our final exchange. I enjoyed the Water Dragon one. I thought that was a really cool set. It was really unique. Then we get another 4 the next month, and then another 4 the next month, and then a 4 the next month. And I think they just saw, I swear they just saw the money signs in their eyes, and they just saw that they could sell more skins and make more money. So then they started to do that, and then they started to come out with the event passes, and it just feels like they're getting really, really greedy. Anybody else agree? Because I feel like every part of the game has become monetized. Like, it used to be, I feel like back in the day when Clash of Clans was at its heyday, when they just like introduced the gold pass, everyone was like, we are going to give you money because this is actually kind of a cool idea and it helps progress the game significantly faster. It was a great idea. Everybody was on board with that. But then they increased the price of it, and then they added the event pass, and then they started to add in all the hero gear and all the packs that you have to buy with that. And you had to unlock everything with the event pass and get the gear to be able to actually start to upgrade in the first place. And once you put in all the work to get the gear, then like, oh, well, then I got to spend $5 and get the event pass. That's 800% value right there. So obviously we need to do that. And it's just been a slow crawl of additional monetization. And then when you add in all of the hero skins on top of that, where it just feels like every single hero skin in the game doesn't feel special anymore because there's so many of them and they're releasing them so fast, where we're getting 4 hero skins every single month, sometimes more than that, then it just kind of takes the allure of having hero skins in the first place away. Because like, if everybody has a billion of them, then it's like you can only have one equipped at a time. So what's the point of having a whole bunch there, you know? So it's just kind of insane. It's just ridiculous how much more they've been trying to monetize the game more recently than in the past there. And it's just, maybe that is the overall goal. Maybe they will willingly sacrifice esports to protect the monetization. But I don't know. I don't know if that ends up working out for them in the long term, because if the esports dies because they're getting greedy and they're over enforcing things that would potentially threaten their monetization, then ultimately you end up in a position where nobody cares about the game anymore. And right now, with the game being so easy, it's starting to feel that way, where it doesn't feel, the game doesn't feel like we're playing the game anymore. It feels more like a chore, you know? The whole game feels like a chore. This one is going to go through here for a Synchronic. Looks like they got the perfect war, and that's kind of expected. Like, there's no satisfaction in a triple anymore. There's just disappointment if you don't triple. I guess we get to see if the mistake didn't happen earlier on in the board there that left the 3 buildings on the board, if this attack right here would have been the one that decides it. But as you can see, Eltano making his way in with one last dragon attack here. And it just comes down to dragons again. Lots of dragons, lots of E-Drags. That's what we see in normal mode there when the Root Riders are banned. And I don't blame the players. Like, the players are going to choose whatever is going to be the most effective to be able to take the bases down, considering the meta. And if the meta says that this is the tax that you have to use, then this is the tax that you have to use. Otherwise, you can't win the war. So I don't blame the players, because I know that these players, when they jump into hard mode, can break out a big variety of attacks and do some very, very cool things. But when you're pushed into a time meta, and the time is the only thing that decides most of the wars, in the case of this war, it was not that. But ultimately, you still see a lot of the same strategies here, because they're all super, super effective. And they're not quite as effective on hard mode. And I really, really wish that they would play the World Championship qualifiers onto hard mode. I still don't understand fully why they are not. But you can see this base is crushed. They definitely would have won it on time if they didn't have the issues with that one attack there, which I think went all the way to the buzzer. And I wonder if they still had a time advantage even with that. It looks like they did. Yeah, so if they had the Phoenix get the last little bit of damage onto those buildings down and let that other one go through for a triple instead of 97%, then they would have won it on time. But that's the state of the game right now, guys. GG to Synchronic. They'll advance to the grand finals of the French Clash Cup, and my rant is done. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.